Hey guys, welcome back to Walking with Empires. It's deep in the night, and outside the window, a vast, silent expanse of ice and snow stretches to the curve of the earth. An endless, beautiful, empty wasteland. You're lying in a sleeper car, tucked beneath a heavy, coarse woolen blanket. The only sounds are the rhythmic, almost hypnotic, clack, clack, clack of the steel wheels on the frozen rails. A sound that rocks you gently back and forth. You hear the deep, guttural sigh of the steam engine, the hiss of pressure being released into the Arctic air. It's the sound of progress, the sound of man taming nature. From a pewter flask, you pour a stream of hot, fragrant tea into a metal cup. The little gurgling sound it makes, as it fills, is the very definition of comfort. A small, warm anchor in the immense, frozen darkness. It's a beautiful picture. The kind of scene you read about in a novel, a story of intrigue and exotic travel to the far edges of the world. And it's a complete, utter load of garbage. That picture, that's the brochure. A rolling, iron-clad nightmare of filth, disease, and soul-crushing boredom. It wasn't about finding yourself. It was about trying very hard not to lose a few toes to frostbite or your life to typhus. You think you'd enjoy it? You, with your memory foam mattress and your central heating and your quaint belief in personal space. Let's be brutally honest with each other. You wouldn't last a week. You'd be begging for the end within the first 12 hours. So let's do this. Let's trade your comfortable chair for a hard wooden plank. Let's strip away the romance and get down to the splinters, the grime, and the bone. Deep cold. Congratulations. The year is 1895, and you've just bought a third-class ticket on the Trans-Siberian Railway. And you are already miserable. Forget the grand. Your point of departure is less a station and more a chaotic, sprawling construction site that has temporarily decided to identify as a transportation hub. The air, thick enough to chew. The dominant note is, of course, coal smoke, acrid and oily. It coats the back of your throat and makes your eyes water. Underneath that is the damp, earthy smell of 1,000 muddy boots churning the frozen ground into a brown slurry. This is layered with the sweet, cloying aroma of cheap, harsh tobacco, the sharp tang of spilled vodka, and hovering over it all like a malevolent spirit, the unmistakable, pervasive stench of unwashed humanity. It's the smell of poverty and desperation, packed tightly together and left to ferment. You're not looking for carriage number 7, sleeper class. You're looking for a number chalked onto the side of what is, for all intents and purposes, a box, a wooden crate on wheels in official parlance. It's a heated goods wagon. The locals have a more honest name for it. A teplushka. You haul yourself up the steep iron steps, your worn bag slung over your shoulder, and the first thing that hits you isn't the sight. It's the sound and the smell, magnified 100 times. The air inside is a physical presence. It's warm, yes, but not in a pleasant way. It's a humid, recycled warmth, thick with the breath of 50 other people, each contributing their own unique bouquet to the atmosphere. The coal smoke from outside is now trapped, mingling with the scent of stale sweat, damp wool, dried fish, garlic, and the faint, acidic undertone of urine from a corner that everyone has silently agreed is the designated problem area. The sound is a low, rumbling cacophony. A baby is crying, a thin, reedy wail that seems to have been going on for days. Two men are arguing in rapid fire Russian, their voices like rocks grinding together. Someone is coughing, a deep, wet, rattling cough that seems to tear something loose from their very lungs. This isn't the gentle hum of a modern passenger train. This is the sound of a refugee camp on rails. Then your eyes adjust to the gloom, and you see the layout. The term open, this is it. You find a sliver of unoccupied plank on the top tier and heave yourself and your bag up. The wood is hard, unforgiving, and already gritty with dirt. You sit, your knees practically touching the ceiling, and survey your new kingdom. You are packed in like sardines in a can. If the sardines were all suffering from various respiratory illnesses and hadn't bathed in a month. Your neighbours are a stoic peasant family to your left, a mother and 3 silent, wide-eyed children, all huddled under a single grey blanket. To your right, a pair of soldiers, their uniforms faded and stained, are sharing a bottle of something clear and potent, their laughter too loud in the confined space. Below you, an old man with a beard that seems to contain remnants of his last several meals is snoring, a bubbling, gurgling sound. This is your community. Your relationship with these people will be forged in the crucible of shared misery, proximity, and the competitive guarding of bread. And as you settle onto the hard wood, you feel the first welcome gift from the Trans-Siberian Railway. A tiny, itching sensation on your arm. A small brown insect is making its way across the back of your hand. A bedbug, of course. It's a thriving, multi-generational metropolis for lice, fleas, and bedbugs. They are the true permanent residents of this train. You are just the travelling buffet. The train gives a sudden, violent lurch, throwing you against the wall. A metallic scream of protest echoes from the couplings, and then, with a slow, grinding groan, you begin to move. The rhythmic clack, clack, clack begins. But it's not soothing. The track is new, laid hastily over uneven ground and shifting permafrost. The journey is not a smooth glide. It's a continuous bone, jarring vibration, punctuated by sudden jolts and sways that threaten to pitch you from your perch onto the floor below. Every imperfection in the rail is transmitted directly up through the floor, through your wooden plank, and into your spine. But the darkness outside doesn't bring quiet. The baby's crying finds new levels of desperation. The coughing man below you now sounds like he's trying to expel a major organ. The soldiers have started singing, a mournful, drunken dirge that goes on and on. You try to sleep. You pull your thin, scratchy blanket up to your chin. The heavy woolen blanket from the fantasy. That's in first class, a different dimension of reality that might as well be on another planet. Your blanket smells faintly of mildew and something you can't quite identify, but you suspect is sorrow. The cold begins to assert itself. The single, pot-bellied iron stove, it glows a dull, angry red, but its warmth is a precious, contested commodity. It creates a small bubble of survivable temperature in the middle of the car, a bubble fiercely guarded by those lucky enough to have bunks near it. For you, up on the top shelf, the heat is a distant rumour. The cold seeps in through the cracks in the wooden walls. It's a physical entity, a predator. You curl into a ball, trying to preserve every last calorie of warmth, your feet slowly turning into blocks of ice. The wood of your bunk feels like a slab of frozen marble against your back. Sleep doesn't come. You just lie there, shivering, listening to the symphony of suffering around you, and feeling the relentless, punishing rhythm of the wheels drilling into your skull. morning, or what passes for it. The grey light filtering through a couple of small, grimy windows reveals the full squalor of your surroundings. The air is even thicker now, stale and unbreathable. It's time for breakfast. You rummage in your bag. There's no dining car. No smiling waiter asking if you'd like coffee. Your catering is strictly bio. You gnaw on a piece. The crust so hard it scrapes the roof of your mouth. This, along with a piece of dried salted fish that stinks to high heaven, and an onion you eat like an apple, is your menu. For today, for tomorrow, for as long as it lasts. Now, about that comforting cup of tea, the gurgling sound of warm liquid. Let's address that. In the corner of the carriage, there is a large metal water boiler, a samovar. This is the lifeblood of the train. The good news is, it provides boiling water known as Fakipia Fe. The bad news is everything else. The water is drawn from questionable sources at station stops. Sometimes a well. It has a distinct metallic taste of rust and sediment. A flavour profile we'll call OD infrastructure. To get your share, you have to join a queue, a silent, shuffling line of people holding out tin cups and pots. There's a strict, unspoken etiquette. You take what you need and no more. Wasting a drop is a cardinal sin. You finally get your turn, filling your tin cup with the steaming, brownish water. You don't have a pewter flask. You have a dented cup that burns your fingers. You drop a few dried leaves of coarse tea into it and watch them swirl. It's hot and it's wet. That's the best you can say about it. You sip it slowly, making it last. It tastes like rust and desperation. But right now, it's the most luxurious thing in the world. Eventually, nature calls a delicate subject. The train's designers, in their infinite wisdom, provided a solution. At the far end of the carriage is a small closet-like space. There is no light, there is no window, and there is no toilet. There is simply a hole in the floor. The user experience is you have to balance yourself in a pitching, swaying closet in complete darkness over a gaping hole that blasts you with a jet of Arctic air that feels like it's trying to perform a cryogenic colonoscopy. The smell in this tiny room is a testament to the failures of the human digestive system. It's a smell so powerful, it has achieved a kind of physical form. Most people, you quickly learn, don't bother. They wait. The train stops frequently, not at stations, but just in the middle of nowhere. It stops to take on wood for the stove, or water for the engine, or because a part has broken, or because the track ahead has sunk into the thawing permafrost. These stops can last for 20 minutes or for 8 hours. When the train groans to a halt, the doors are thrown open, and there is a mass exodus. Men and women pour out into the snow, fanning out on either side of the tracks. They find a modicum of privacy behind a snowdrift or a sparse birch tree and relieve themselves. There's no shame, no embarrassment. It's a biological necessity, performed with a grim practiced efficiency. The pristine white snow around the tracks is soon pockmarked with yellow stains and dark patches. It's a stark, visceral reminder of your complete and utter lack of dignity, privacy. By the third day, it's a hypnotic, maddening white void snow sky. The occasional dark line of distant forest. That's it, for hundreds, then thousands of miles. The landscape doesn't change. You don't have a phone to scroll through. You don't have a podcast to listen to. Most passengers, including you, are illiterate. So a book is out of the question. Your entertainment options are limited. You can stare at the wall, you can stare at the snow, or you can engage in the most popular pastime, a silent, simmering resentment of everyone and everything around you. The days bleed into one another, a monotonous cycle of shivering, gnawing on hard bread, sipping rusty tea and waiting. It's in the air you breathe, in the water you drink, on the bodies of your fellow travellers it's disease. This rolling wooden box is a perfect incubator. The lack of sanitation, the close quarters, the poor nutrition. It's a 5-star resort for pathogens. The lice crawling in your clothes and hair aren't just a disgusting annoyance. They are carriers. Specifically, they are carriers of epidemic typhus, the dreaded camp fever. You look around the carriage. That man with the persistent, rattling cough, probably tuberculosis. The family with the listless, pale children. Could be anything. Cholera and dysentery are always a threat, turning the already horrific toilet situation into a life or death gamble. You try not to breathe too deeply when you pass the man who has been shivering with fever for 2 days. You become hyper, aware of your own body, analysing every ache, every pang, every itch. Is this headache the start of a fever? A quiet, fearful murmur spreads through the nearby bunks. He's dead. He likely died in the middle of the night, from a fever, from his heart, from sheer exhaustion. No one knows. They pull his blanket over his face, and you keep moving. The train clatters on, and the dead man lies on his bunk, a silent, stiffening passenger on his final journey. You eat your stale bread, trying not to look down, trying not to think about the fact that you are breathing the same air as a dead body. You will share your room with him until the next major station stop, which could be a day away. It's a stark, brutal lesson in the priorities of 1895. The train must move forward. The dead are just cargo, and you lie there, on your hard plank, the stench of death now faintly mingling with the carriage's already complex perfume. The romantic adventure, the grand tour. You are freight, and you are just hoping you don't get damaged in transit. Then, after what feels like an eternity, you blink, and you're back. You're in your chair. The room is quiet. The air is clean. You can feel the soft fabric of your clothes against your skin, not the scratch of lice. It was a marvel of engineering, a testament to human ambition. But for the people who actually rode in those wooden boxes, it was a special kind of hell, a slow, cold, filthy journey across a frozen abyss, where the greatest luxury was a cup of hot, rusty water, and the greatest achievement was simply arriving at the other end, alive. So, the next time you find yourself complaining because your flight is delayed or the train's Wi-Fi is spotty, just take a moment. Think about that wooden box. Think about the lice, the cold, the coughing, the corpse. Pour yourself a cup of tea from a clean tap and be profoundly, deeply grateful that you don't have to fight for it. We'll see you next time when we'll explore what happens when you finally get off the train. Spoiler alert, it doesn't get better. You've settled in for the night on the great steel artery of the Russian Empire. You have your thick wool blanket, the rhythmic lullaby of the wheels on the track, and a cup of hot tea to ward off the chill. It all sounds rather poetic, doesn't it? A scene from a novel, a romantic adventure for the ages. Let's start with that tea. This is a thick, viscous stream of near-black liquid, a tarry concentrate known as Fezavaka. Fayet hits the bottom of your tin cup, with a heavy fey-hump face. This isn't tea. This is the essence of tea, boiled down for hours, possibly days, until it holds the colour of crude oil and the consistency of engine grease. It's a survival tool, not a beverage. Now for the hot water Ivory carriage, by imperial decree, is equipped with a samovar, a glorious brassy urn, a beacon of civilization in this rattling purgatory. The good news is it provides boiling water, free of charge, 24/7. The bad news, everything else about it. You shuffle down the narrow corridor. The samovar stands at the end of the car, hissing like a cornered snake. It's fueled by charcoal, or wood, or whatever combustible refuse the conductor could find at the last stop. The water inside has been boiling in the same uncleaned tank for 1,000 versts, cheerfully absorbing the taste of soot, coal dust, metallic residue, and the faint, ghostly memory of every cabbage soup that's ever been reconstituted within its steamy radius. You hold your cup under the spigot and turn the handle. The water that comes out isn't clear. The black tar dissolves into a liquid the colour of a muddy river. You take a sip, but behind it there are other notes. The undeniable tang of iron, the smokiness of cheap coal, a hint of something vaguely organic, like boiled leaves. It's hot and it's wet, and that's the extent of its positive attributes. It coats your tongue with a gritty film. This isn't a comfort. This is a test of your will to live, delivered in a tin cup. But you drink it. You drink all of it, because the alternative is feeling the cold that's constantly seeping through the floorboards. A cold that feels less like a temperature and more like a predator, waiting for you to stop moving. Now, back to your bunk. Let's talk about that thick wool blanket. Thick it is. It has the weight and texture of a It was woven in a factory where joy went to die, and it carries the stories of every soul who has huddled under it before you. You pull it up to your chin and take a deep, unwilling breath. The smell is not of lavender or fresh linen. It's an olfactory archive of human desperation. The primary note is damp wool, an aroma akin to a wet sheep that's been living in a cellar. Underneath that, you can identify the sharp, acrid ghost of cheap tobacco, the pungent funk of dried sweat, and the faint, sweetish odour of stale vodka. There's a hint of boiled sausage in there somewhere, and a lingering miasma of unwashed feet that seems to have permanently bonded with the fibres. This isn't a blanket. You try to find a patch that smells slightly less of despair, a fool's errand. You can feel the collective grime of 100 other journeys against your skin. And as you lie there, you feel a tiny tickling sensation on your neck. Is it a stray thread, or is it the welcoming party lice you see? Were not so much a risk on the Trans-Siberian as they were an onboard amenity. Think of them as your travel companions, the ones who will literally get under your skin. You shift your weight, trying to find a comfortable position. This brings you to the surface you're lying on. It's a bunk, a simple, honest, wooden plank. There is no mattress. That's a luxury for second class. In third class, you get the authentic, unadulterated experience of wood. A stray splinter threatens to begin a more intimate relationship with your shoulder blade. Your hip bone grinds against the unyielding surface. This isn't a bed. It's a shelf for storing people. You have about as much personal space as a library book. And you're just as likely to get your spine broken. The rhythmic clatter of the train. From a distance, it's a soothing mantra from your wooden plank, 2 feet from the wheels. It's a series of violent metallic explosions happening inches from your ear. Fika, chunk, screech, thump, ka, chunk, asterisk. Each joint in the rails is a percussive detonation that shudders through your skeleton. A glorious testament to Tsarist ambition, thrown together by an army of convicts and peasants who were paid in bread and beatings. Some sections of the track are laid directly onto the permafrost. That means in summer they sink, in winter they heave. The result is a ride that feels less like gliding on rails and more like being shaken in a giant tin can by a furious god. The gentle fey-hiss-fey of the steam, that's the sound of the heating system. A network of pipes runs through the carriage, carrying scalding hot steam. These pipes are either dangerously hot, capable of giving you a third-degree burn if you brush against them, or they are stone cold, having frozen somewhere between the engine and your car. There is no in-between, no thermostat, no customer service hotline to call. You are either slowly cooking or slowly freezing. Right now, the pipe near your head is radiating a Sahara, like heat, while your feet near the drafty window are slowly turning into blocks of ice. It's the worst of both worlds, a bespoke microclimate of misery. You try to distract yourself by looking out the window. For the first hour, it's majestic, a monochrome masterpiece of sublime emptiness. It's an infinite expanse of nothing. White, more white. A line of skeletal birch trees. Then more white. The sheer, soul-crushing monotony of it grinds you down. The view doesn't change. It just continues. The window itself is a portal to this bleakness. A delicate lacework of ice crystals grows on the inside of the glass, blurring the already featureless landscape into a uniform white smear. Condensation and soot have conspired to paint the rest of the pane with a translucent brown film. You're not looking at Siberia, you're looking at a dirty cataract. And you are not alone in this rattling box. Oh, no. That would be far too merciful. You are in a third-class carriage. Think of it as a dormitory on wheels. An open-plan experiment in communal living, where the only thing you share is the suffering. There are 54 bunks in this car. 54 souls, packed in triple-tiered shelves along both walls. You can hear them all. You can smell them all. You are part of them. Across the narrow aisle, a man is snoring. This isn't a gentle, rumbling snore. This is a wet, guttural hacking sound, like a drowning bear trying to gargle gravel. With every inhale, he seems to suck all the oxygen out of the carriage. With every exhale, he releases a cloud of what smells suspiciously like fermented pickles and regret. He's been at it for 4 hours. He shows no signs of stopping. From the bunk below you, you hear the quiet, rhythmic creak of wood and the murmur of prayers. An old woman, a fey babushka, fey wrapped in a dozen layers of black wool, is rocking back and forth, her lips moving silently. She's been doing that since you left Tomsk. She smells of mothballs and earth. She clutches a small wooden icon and stares into a distance that has nothing to do with the Siberian landscape. Is she praying for deliverance? Or is she praying for the snoring man to have a sudden, fatal aneurysm? You find yourself hoping for the latter. Then there's the family. They occupy a whole section of 6 bunks further down. A mother, a father, and what appears to be an entire village of small children. They are not sleeping. One of the children is crying. A thin, reedy wail that Anatha is coughing. It's a deep, wet, productive cough, the kind that makes you instinctively check your own lungs for signs of imminent collapse. The parents speak to them in harsh, weary whispers. They have a crate with them. Something in the crate occasionally makes a bleating sound. You saw it when they boarded a goat. They brought a goat. It's faint. It's their emotional support animal. 1895. You can taste the coal smoke from the engine, the unwashed bodies, the goat, the pickles, the prayers, the sickness. The window is sealed shut until spring. The only ventilation is the small, slatted opening in the ceiling, which mostly serves to let in more soot and cinders from the locomotive. It leaves a small, brown scorch mark, a tiny souvenir of your journey through hell. You decide you need to use the toilet. You always know it is a bad decision. But biology is a cruel master. You navigate the obstacle course of luggage, sleeping bodies, and miscellaneous debris. A sack of potatoes has spilled its contents. You kick a potato out of the way. The toilet is at the very end of the car, a wall of ammonia and frozen waste that makes your eyes water and your stomach churn. It's a smell that has transcended mere unpleasantness and achieved a kind of sublime elemental horror. It will stay in your nostrils for days. It might be permanently etched onto your soul. The toilet is not a toilet. It is a hole. A simple, unadorned hole in the floor of the carriage that opens directly onto the tracks below. As the train hurtles along at 40 kilometers an hour, using it is an act of extreme bravery and strategic calculation. The room, and I use that term loosely, is a tiny metal closet. The floor is slick with ice. Not ice from water. Ice from other liquids. The walls are metal, and they are colder than a tax collector's heart. There is no toilet paper. Toilet paper is a bourgeois fantasy. There might be a stack of old newspapers, or probably a government report on agricultural yields. You have to brace yourself against the lurching of the train, maintain your balance on a floor of frozen filth, and expose your tender flesh to a gale. Force wind that feels like it's coming directly from the heart of a glacier. It is, without question, the most vulnerable and unpleasant a human being can be. The experience is brief, brutal, and leaves you feeling violated by physics itself. You stumble back out into the corridor, gasping for the comparatively fresh air of the carriage, which now smells by contrast like a field of wildflowers. You make your way back to your wooden slab, your little slice of heaven. The snoring man has entered a new phase, a series of short, sharp snorts like a hog rooting for truffles. The baby is still crying. The goat bleats, a lonely, pathetic sound. You lie back down. The blanket feels heavier. The wood feels harder. The train isn't carrying you to a destination. You are just another piece of cargo. Another nameless body being shipped across the frozen roof of the world. And you think about the men who built this, the thousands upon thousands of them, convicts with shackled ankles, driving spikes into frozen ground, Chinese and Korean labourers, paid a pittance, dying of cholera and exposure. The official death toll was, of course, modest. The real toll is buried under the rails, a foundation of bones holding up this grand imperial dream. Ivory Faker, chunk fey of the wheels, is a drumbeat on their forgotten graves. You're not just riding a train, you're riding a 6,000-mile-long You pull the rancid blanket tighter. You are a tiny, insignificant speck in the middle of a vast frozen ocean. And your lifeboat is a stinking, rattling, overcrowded cage. You try to remember what it feels like to be clean, to be warm all over, at the same time, to have a moment of silence. These concepts now seem like distant, fantastical luxuries from a life you lived a long time ago. On another planet, you have 8 more days of this to go. 8 more days, more than a week. The thought lands in your stomach like a stone. You stare up at the bunk above you, just inches from your face. You can see the dark stains on the wood. You can hear the slow, steady breathing of the person sleeping there. You feel a sudden, overwhelming sense of claustrophobia, the walls of the carriage pressing in, the weight of all these lives, all this breath, all this misery, crushing down on you. And then you feel it again, that tiny tickling sensation. This time, A definite. The journey has just begun. It's been replaced by a dull, throbbing acceptance, a low-grade hum of misery that has become the new baseline for your existence. You lie on your bunk, which is less a bed and more a thinly disguised plank of wood, a shelf for a human being. The heavy wool blanket you've pulled up to your chin isn't the cozy comforter from the romantic paintings. It's a coarse, scratchy thing, stiff with age and impregnated with the ghostly aromas of 1,000 previous travellers. It smells faintly of damp dog, stale tobacco, and a deep underlying note of human sorrow. You try to tell yourself it's a historic artifact, a tapestry of olfactory memories. But mostly, it just smells bad. The train continues its sermon. Fekadonk, kadonk, kadonk, kadonk asterisk. That sound you thought was so rhythmic and soothing on the first night. It's the ticking of a clock that measures nothing. It's the sound of distance being consumed without any sense of arrival. Fis SSSSSS. Chak asterisk. The wheels grind against the rails. A metallic scream that's been stretched thin over thousands of miles. It's the only conversation you have that never ends. You shift your weight, trying to find a position that doesn't involve a new and interesting pressure point. The bunk groans in protest. There is no memory foam here. There is no ergonomic support. There is only wood and the immutable laws of physics that govern the interaction between your hip bone and a hard, unyielding surface. Sleep doesn't come in long, restful waves. It comes in ragged, shallow fits, snatched in the brief lulls between a neighbour's cough and the train lurching over a poorly laid section of track. You don't so much sleep as you do. Pause, let's talk about your neighbours, your new family. Because in this glorious experiment in open concept living, there are no strangers, only future annoyances. The concept of personal space has been politely asked to leave the carriage. Privacy. What's that? Some kind of decadent Western import. One breathing, snoring, coughing, rustling, stinking organism, packed together like salted fish, in a barrel across the narrow aisle. A merchant from Omsk is sleeping, or at least his body is horizontal. What he's actually doing is producing a sound that you can only describe as a bear trying to gargle a bucket of bolts. It's a wet, guttural, rasping snore that seems to vibrate through the very floor of the carriage. It's not just a sound, it's a physical presence. Each inhalation is a desperate, whistling gasp for air, as if he's drowning on the Siberian plains. Each exhalation is a rumbling, phlegmy explosion that makes the small candle flame in its lantern flicker. You've spent the last 3 nights fantasizing about the many creative ways. One could silence him using only a half-eaten loaf of black bread and a spare bootlace. These are the thoughts that keep you company in the dark. A mother, a father, and 3 small children who seem to be made of pure, uncut restlessness. The mother's constant, weary shushing. The father's hollow, racking cough. A dry, percussive sound that speaks of lungs full of dust and despair. You listen to him cough, and you can almost taste the coal dust, the factory floor, the cheap, harsh tobacco. Every cough is a little piece of his life, atomized and sprayed into the shared, recycled air of the carriage. Air which, by the way, now has the approximate freshness of the inside of a sealed jar where a small animal died last week. It's a thick, soupy atmosphere, layered with the smells of unwashed bodies, boiled cabbage, damp wool, and the ever-present, acrid bite of coal smoke that seeps in through every crack and joint in the carriage walls. You don't breathe it. The train is a great leveller. It subjects you all to the same relentless vibration, the same cramped quarters, the same soul-crushing boredom. You're all just cargo, self-loading, complaining cargo. Eventually, the grey light of another Siberian dawn. It's more like the world is slowly being drained of its blackness, leaving a pale washed out nothing in its place. A few skeletal birch trees, looking like they gave up halfway through growing more snow. It's like watching the same frame of a film on a loop for a week. Sometimes, for a bit of variety, you'll see a slightly different arrangement of skeletal birch trees. It's thrilling. With the light comes movement. The carriage groans back to life. The merchant across the way wakes with a final, magnificent snort that sounds like a hog being startled. He sits up, rubs his face with a greasy hand, and immediately begins unwrapping a parcel of food. It's a smell that doesn't just enter your nose, it colonizes it. You'll be tasting that fish for the rest of the day. He catches you looking and gives you a gap-toothed, cheerful grin, as if sharing this aromatic gift with you is the most natural thing in the world. You try to smile back, but your face muscles have forgotten how. Time to think about sustenance. That sad, lukewarm liquid in your tin flask that you've been calling tea isn't going to cut it. The good news is, this train has a dining car. The bad news is, this train has a dining car. Making your way there is an expedition in itself. You stumble down the swaying corridor, lurching from side to side like a drunkard, grabbing onto whatever surface you can to stay upright. Every surface is coated in a thin, greasy film of coal dust and condensation. You pass through other third-class carriages, each one a carbon copy of your own little slice of heaven, packed to the gills with humanity. You feel the eyes on you. Who is this? Moving between cars? A person with business? A person with money? Or just a fool on their way to be disappointed by soup? You finally wrestle the heavy door open and step into the dining car. The change in atmosphere is immediate. It's brighter here. It's also smokier, filled with the blue haze of expensive cigars and the sharp smell of spilled vodka. Stern-faced men with magnificent beards and military uniforms, their chests glittering with medals, portly government officials with faces like spoiled puddings. A woman in a fur hat who looks at you as if you are something she's just discovered on the bottom of her shoe. The customer service is, shall we say, brisk. A waiter with a stained apron and an expression of profound boredom slaps a menu down on the table in front of you. It's a short list. Fish chiffé cabbage soup, boiled beef kasha. You opt for the soup. What arrives is a bowl of grey translucent liquid with a few sad limp strands of cabbage floating in it, like wreckage. A single lonely fleck of dill drifts on the surface. You can see the bottom of the bowl through the soup. It tastes exactly as it looks, like hot water that someone once whispered the word cabbage to. It's the ghost of a soup, the memory of a meal. But it is hot. and you slurp it down. The bread that comes with it is dense and sour, but it's something to chew on. You eat it slowly, making it last, acutely aware of the stony-faced military officer at the next table, who is dissecting a piece of dubious-looking sturgeon with surgical precision. You feel utterly out of place, a peasant who has wandered into the king's court by mistake. You finish your spectral soup, pay the man, and retreat back to the familiar democratic misery of your own carriage. At least there, the judgment is silent. For most people on this train, of course, the dining car is a fantasy. Their survival depends on what they brought with them, or what they can scavenge at the station stops. And the station stops, oh, the station stops are a spectacle. Haas will pass with nothing but the fekadonk, kadonk fey and the endless white. Then, with a long, mournful hiss of steam and a jarring squeal of brakes, the train will grind to a halt. The destination is rarely a town. More often, it is a glorified shed next to a massive pile of firewood and a water tower. This is a pit stop. The engine is thirsty and hungry, and so are you. The moment the train stops, the doors are flung open and a frantic energy seizes the passengers. This is your chance for a brief respite from the rolling prison for food. A mad dash ensues. People pour out onto the platform. A chaotic flood of grey coats and worn boots. The cold hits you like a physical blow. Local peasants, wrapped in so many layers they look like ambulatory bundles of rags, have appeared as if from nowhere. They stand beside baskets, their faces raw and red from the wind. They are selling salvation in small, greasy packages. Boiled eggs of a suspicious, vaguely greyish hue. Hot potatoes, black from the fire, that you juggle from hand to keep from burning your fingers. The warmth, a precious, fleeting treasure. And fey piroshki, fey little fried pies, filled with, well, it could be the leftover bits of an animal you'd rather not identify. You buy one. It's greasy enough to leave a translucent stain on the cheap paper it's wrapped in. You take a bite. It's hot, savoury, and tastes of fried dough and mystery meat. It is the most delicious thing you have ever eaten. You have maybe 15-20 minutes. It's a frantic race against time. You need to get food, you need to stretch your legs, and you absolutely must not stray too far from the train. There are no friendly announcements, no all aboard. The conductor will blow a whistle once, a sharp, piercing shriek that cuts through the cold air. The engine will let out a great sigh of steam, and then, with a lurch that threatens to knock you off your feet, the train will begin to move. If you are not on it, you will be left behind in the middle of the Siberian wilderness, with a half-eaten meat pie and a dawning sense of profound catastrophic error. You see the panic in people's eyes as they scramble back towards the doors, shoving and climbing over one another. You join the fray, hauling yourself up the icy steps, back into the familiar fug of the carriage. The door slams shut. The world goes back to being a blurry smear of white outside the window, and the fekadonk, kadonk fey, resumes its endless sermon. Your heart is pounding, partly from the exertion, partly from the adrenaline of not being abandoned to the wolves. You sit in your spot, clutching your remaining potato like a holy relic. The merchant is already gnawing on a whole string of boiled eggs, shell and all. The brief, chaotic interlude is over. The long, monotonous reality has returned. And with it, another pressing concern. Hygiene, or more accurately, its complete and utter absence. There's a permanent crescent of dirt under your fingernails. You long for a shower with an intensity that borders on religious fervour. A hot shower, a cold shower, any shower, but there are no showers. There is the washroom. You turn the handle. Of course there's no soap. Soap is for princes and kings. You splash the freezing water on your face. It's less a cleansing experience and more a form of shock therapy. It does nothing to remove the grime, but it does wake you up with brutal efficiency. You look up at the mirror above the basin. It's a small, warped piece of polished metal, cracked down the middle. The face that stares back at you is a pale, smudged stranger with tired eyes. You look like a ghost who's been sleeping in a chimney. And then there's the toilet. Calling it a toilet is an act of extreme generosity. It's a hole in the floor of a tiny, foul, smelling cupboard. The flush is the 60-kilometre per hour wind rushing past. The experience is a multi-sensory assault. The smell is potent, eye-watering miasma of ammonia and human waste that has soaked into the very wood of the walls. Then there's the cold, a constant, ferocious updraft of Arctic air blasts up through the hole. A direct violation from the Siberian winter. Using it is an act of desperate courage, a battle against the elements and your own gag reflex, all while trying to keep your balance in a swaying, lurching box. You get in, you do what you must, and you get out as fast as humanly possible, slamming the door on the horror within. You take a deep breath of the merely terrible air in the corridor, which now smells like a rose garden by comparison. You return to your bunk, feeling no cleaner, but perhaps a little. You're trapped. Trapped in the noise. The land outside is vast, but your world has shrunk to the size of this carriage. It's a world of splintered wood, scratchy wool, and the constant oppressive presence of other people. Days have begun to blur. Was that this morning you bought the potato? Or was it yesterday? The sun rises and the sun sets, but time itself seems to have been suspended, replaced by the simple binary state of moving or not moving. You stare out the window. Snow. The memories feel thin, like old photographs. The future feels like an abstract concept. There is only the train. There is only the noise. There is only the endless, hypnotic soul, crushingly empty white. You pour the last of the brownish water from your flask into your cup. You drink it and you are right in the middle of it. The warmth from the tin cup is a lie. A temporary, fleeting truce with the cold that seeps not just from the window pane, but from the very soul of this iron beast. You hold it with both hands. A tiny hearth in the vast, frozen church of the Siberian night. The fey gurgle fey of the tea was a moment of civilization. The fey clack, 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 clack fey of the wheels, a hypnotic rhythm. For a few precious seconds, you could almost believe the romantic myth, the grand adventure, the forging of an empire, one steel rail at a time. But the warmth is fading. The tea is already cooling, its weak, leafy ghost, a poor defence against the creeping reality. And reality in 1895 has a smell. It starts subtly. A background note you've been trying to ignore. But now, as the dregs of your tea turn tepid, you can no longer filter it out. It's a complex bouquet, a sommelier's nightmare. The dominant note is unwashed human, a thick, greasy odour of stale sweat, of bodies that have been sealed in wool and flannel for days, marinating in their own exertions. It's the smell of a locker room that has given up, surrendered to its own fungal destiny. Then there are the supporting scents, the sharp, acrid tang of cheap tobacco, the kind that smells less like cured leaves and more like burning weeds someone pulled from a ditch. The heavy, almost sweetish odour of boiled cabbage and onions, a phantom of a meal consumed hours ago, now clinging to the thick, unmoving air like a possessive ghost. And beneath it all, a faint, damp, earthy smell. The scent of wet wool, of damp leather boots, and something else. Something vaguely like a cellar. A cellar where things have been left to spoil. You take a shallow breath through your mouth. The taste is somehow worse than the smell. It coats your tongue, an oily film of communal human existence. The rhythmic clack, clack-fay of the train, is not the only sound either. You were just focusing on it, but now the symphony of human misery is demanding your attention. A wet, productive sound, as if the man's lungs are trying to violently evict a stubborn, unwelcome tenant. It comes in salvos of 3 or 4, followed by a long, wheezing gasp for air that sounds like a rusty bellows. Each cough sends a tiny, imperceptible shudder through the wooden bunk you're lying on. You imagine a fine mist of pathogens, a microscopic cloud of epidemiological doom, rising in the stagnant air. You pull the coarse wool blanket a little higher over your nose. It's a useless gesture. The blanket has its own scent, a dusty, vaguely animal smell, like a forgotten corner of a barn. It's not an improvement. From across the narrow aisle, this isn't the gentle, rhythmic purr of a contented sleeper. This is a violent, guttural battle for oxygen, a series of choked, wet grunts, followed by a sudden, explosive snort that sounds like a pig being startled. The pattern is erratic, a long, low rumble that builds in intensity, reaches a crescendo of strangled gasps, and then a terrifying, pregnant pause that lasts just long enough for you to wonder if the man has finally died. It's a public audition for a death rat. And there are other sounds. The soft, incessant whimpering of a child somewhere down the carriage. The low murmur of a conversation in a language you don't understand. The words rising and falling with the weary cadence of a long argument that has no resolution. The rustle of someone shifting on a straw, stuffed mattress. The faint, metallic fay of a bottle. Privacy. What's that? This isn't a sleeper car. It is a dormitory on wheels. A rolling flophouse with a view of endless, unforgiving snow. Your bunk is less a bed and more a shelf. A human filing cabinet. You're slotted into your designated space. A few feet of vertical territory. And that's your entire world. The heavy curtain you can pull across the opening isn't for privacy. It's the 19th century equivalent of putting on headphones in an open-plan office and hoping nobody talks to you. It doesn't work. You lie perfectly still. Listening, the man below coughs again. A hacking, desperate sound that seems to tear something loose in his... You hear a wet spit and the soft thud of something hitting the wooden floor. You close your eyes and try to will yourself to sleep, but your mind is now cataloguing the physical sensations. The mattress beneath you is a lumpy, unforgiving landscape. It's not memory foam. It's not even a cohesive whole. It feels like a cat every time you shift your weight. A new protuberance makes itself known, jabbing into your hip, your shoulder, the small of your back. The pillow is a similar bag of tricks, a dense, unyielding lump that holds your head at an unnatural angle, guaranteeing a stiff neck that will last until you reach Omska. It's a weighted blanket of despair. Its job isn't to comfort you. but to crush you with the sheer oppressive gravity of your situation. The wool is coarse, itchy. It feels like being embraced by a very large, very depressed sheep. Through the thin material of your clothes, you can feel the individual fibers scratching at your skin, 1,000 tiny irritations to add to the growing list. And the motion, the train doesn't glide. It lurches, it sways from side to side with a nauseating, pendulum-like motion, then jolts forward and back, a constant, unpredictable shuddering that makes your teeth ache. It's not the gentle rocking of a cradle. It's the violent shaking of a paint can. It is not a luxury cruise. It is a multi-day endurance event, a test of your sanity and your immune system. The ticket didn't buy you passage. It bought you a supporting role in a slow-moving public health crisis. Hours pass. Or maybe it's minutes. Time has lost all meaning, measured only in coughs, snores, and the relentless fey-lack, clack, clack fey of the wheels. Sleep is a distant, unattainable shore. You are adrift in a sea of noise and discomfort. Eventually, the darkness outside begins to soften. A pale grey light seeps into the carriage, illuminating the scene in merciless detail. The air, which was merely a collection of smells in the dark, is now visible. It's a hazy, swirling soup of dust motes, condensation, and human breath, caught in the weak shafts of dawn light. You can see the air you're breathing, and you wish you couldn't. The train groans to a halt. The sudden silence is more jarring than the noise. It's a dead, heavy quiet, broken only by the final, lingering hiss of steam from the engine and the wheezing of the man in the bunk below. This is a station stop, a chance for a brief parole from your wooden prison. You swing your legs over the side of the bunk, your feet finding the cold, grimy floor. The man below you is a heap of blankets, a mound of anonymous misery. It's better to imagine him as a sound effect, a disembodied symptom of the journey. The carriage slowly comes to life, a collective groan, a stretching of stiff limbs. The air thickens with the morning breath of 40 strangers. It's a staggering wave of foulness, a combination of decaying teeth, sour stomachs, and cheap vodka from the night before. It hits you with physical force. You join the slow, shuffling procession towards the end of the car. There's a samovar, a large, ornate metal urn, dispensing hot water. This is one of the train's premium features, access to boiling water. The queue is long and silent. Everyone has the same hollow-eyed, exhausted look. The look of people who have not slept, but have merely endured. A man in a military-style greatcoat pushes past you, his shoulder digging into your ribs. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't even look at you. Customer service hasn't been invented yet. Or rather, it exists only for people in first class, who are probably, at this very moment, being served lemon pastries by a man in white gloves, in a carriage you will never ever see. You finally get your turn. You hold your tin cup under the spigot and fill it with scalding water. You have your own stash of black bread and hard cheese, but you're not sure you have the stomach for it. You watch the steam rise from the cup. It's clean. It's pure. It's the only clean thing in this entire universe. You could make tea, but you also need to use the toilet. And this presents a strategic dilemma of monumental proportions. The toilet, a small vertical coffin at the end of the carriage, where the laws of physics and hygiene have been suspended. The good news is there's a toilet. The bad news is everything else about it. It's a simple hole in the floor. a direct-to-ground system that offers an unfiltered high-speed view of the tracks rushing by below. This is ingenious. The problem, of course, is that the train is currently stopped. The hole now opens onto a static, frozen patch of gravel and ice directly beneath the carriage. Another problem is the wind. It's a chillingly effective bidet system, delivering a spray of ice-cold air and whatever else happens to be flying around under the train directly to your most sensitive areas. They call it the Siberian kiss. It's a concentrated, weaponized version of every bad odor you've ever encountered. It's a smell that has weight, a smell that clings to the back of your throat and stings your eyes. The floor is slick with something you don't want to know. You retreat back into the main carriage. You decide to risk the platform. Stepping out of the carriage is like stepping into another world. The cold hits you like a physical blow. It's a dry, clean, searing cold that takes your breath away and makes the inside of your nostrils freeze instantly. The air is so cold it feels sharp. After the thick, soupy atmosphere of the carriage, it's a shock to the system. The station is not a station. It's a few wooden buildings huddled together against the endless white. A handful of figures are scattered on the platform, wrapped in so many layers of fur and wool. They look like ambulatory bundles of laundry. Their faces are red and raw from the wind. Their breath hangs in front of them in thick white clouds. A woman is selling something from a basket. Piroshkis, small fried pies. They smell incredible. The scent of hot oil and savory filling cuts through the frozen air. She hands you a pie, wrapped in a scrap of greasy paper. It's hot. So hot it burns your fingers through the paper. You take a bite. The pastry is flaky, the filling a savory mix of potato and onion. It's the most delicious thing you have ever tasted. It's a moment of pure, unadulterated joy, a tiny island of pleasure in an ocean of misery. You eat it quickly, greedily, before the cold can steal its warmth. For 30 seconds, you are happy. A long, mournful sound that echoes across the frozen plain. The brief parole is over. It's time to return to your cell. Climbing back into the carriage is like plunging back into a fever dream. The wall of warm, foul air hits you again. The smells of unwashed bodies and stale cabbage welcome you back. The brief, beautiful taste of the pyroshok is already a fading memory, replaced by the familiar greasy coating on your tongue. The snorer has started up again, even though he is awake. A series of congested grunts as he clears his throat. Nothing has changed. Nothing will ever change. The train lurches into motion. The station, your tiny oasis of hot pies and clean, cold air, recedes into the distance. The same sounds, the same smells, the same lurching, swaying, soul-crushing motion. You look out the window. The landscape is a hypnotic, unending panorama of white. Snow-covered plains stretch to the horizon, dotted with stunted, skeletal birch trees. There are no mountains, no valleys, no features of any kind. Just white, an endless, featureless void. It's beautiful. The sheer scale of it, the emptiness. You bought a ticket. He's singing a slurred maudlin song, his voice cracking with emotion. He bumps into a woman's bunk, and she shouts at him. He shouts back. An argument erupts, a flurry of angry, guttural words. No one intervenes. This is just the afternoon's entertainment. The in-flight movie is a live performance of human desperation. You lie on your lumpy mattress and stare at the wooden slats of the bunk above you, just inches from your face. The grain of the wood is a landscape in itself. You can trace the lines with your eyes, follow the walls and knots. It's more interesting than the endless white outside. The man below starts coughing. It's worse now. A deep, racking, painful sound. A sound of defeat. You close your eyes. The fake clack, clack, clack fay of the wheels is the only constant. The heartbeat of the machine that is carrying you deeper and deeper into this vast, cold, indifferent emptiness. You try to focus on it, to let it lull you into something resembling peace. But it's no use. You can't unsmell the smells. You can't unhear the sounds. You can't unfeel the lumpy mattress and the constant jarring motion. This is the myth of the great railway adventure, stripped bare. This is about surviving the journey, and the journey has only just begun. The thought is so overwhelming, so crushingly vast, that you can only do one thing. You turn your face to the cold wooden wall, and you begin to count the clacks of the wheels, 1, 2, 3, 4. The silence is the first thing you notice. Not a true silence. Of course, true silence doesn't, but the rhythm is gone. The comforting, hypnotic, maddeningly consistent fake clack, 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 clack fay of the wheels has ceased. The percussive heartbeat of your entire world. For how long has it been? You can't remember. You can hear it now properly. A high, thin scream, no longer muffled by the train's own noise. It sounds hungry. It's a sound that strips the flesh from bones. Every spring that has lost its will to live is a familiar pressure point against your ribs, your hip, your shoulder. The cold. It's a physical presence, a predator that has been waiting patiently for the fire in the engine's belly to die. You pull the heavy blanket tighter, up to your nose. It smells of stale sweat, wood smoke, and a faint, unsettling sweetness you've learnt. Is the aroma of unwashed humanity slowly fermenting. It's the smell of a crowd that has been trapped in a jar for 2 weeks. But it's warmer than the air. So you breathe it in deeply. This is what comfort has been reduced to. Inhaling the ghost of 100 other miseries to ward off the immediate threat of freezing. The gurgle of the tea you poured earlier seems like a memory from another lifetime. The merchant with the magnificent grease-stained beard, who normally snores with the force of a failing sawmill, is utterly quiet. The young woman across the aisle, who has been weeping softly into a handkerchief for 3 days straight, is silent. Even the baby, that tiny, inexhaustible engine of despair, has ceased its wailing. The sudden stop has shocked everyone into a state of primal fear. It's the terror of the herd when the lead animal freezes, ears pricked, smelling a wolf on the wind. Then the shouting starts. Far down the train, muffled, angry Russian, the sound of heavy boots on frozen ground. A door slams somewhere, the noise cracking the fragile silence. Like a gunshot, a conductor stands there, his face framed by a massive fur hat, his breath pluming in the lamplight. He looks like a man who has wrestled a bear and lost, but only just. He barks something, a torrent of words. A man in the bunk below you, a minor bureaucrat from Smolensk, with a face like a worried potato, asks a question in a trembling voice. The conductor spits a one-word answer that sounds like a curse and slams the door shut, plunging you back into the relative dark. The bureaucrat translates for the benefit of no one in particular, his voice hollow. They are a potential death sentence. You are 100 miles from the last stop, a miserable collection of wooden huts named after a saint. no one remembers. You are 200 miles from the next one, which is probably worse. You are in the middle of a white, featureless void. The maps call this the taiga, but looking out the window, the good news is the train is carrying its own workshop, a whole car dedicated to repairs. The bad news is the repairs must be done outside, in the dark, in wind that feels like it's made of tiny flying shards of glass, at a temperature that freezes exposed skin in under a minute. The 19th century version of roadside assistance involves several large, heavily bearded men, a great deal of swearing, and a forge, a literal coal-fired forge, which they are now attempting to light on the frozen ground beside the tracks. You can see them through your grimy window, silhouettes dancing in the flickering, nascent glow of the fire. They move with a stiff, desperate energy. One of them drops a wrench. The clang is sharp, brittle. You imagine his fingers inside their thick leather gloves are already numb, clumsy things. You watch them work, these anonymous heroes of the industrial age, and you feel a strange mix of pity and terror. Their survival is your survival. Their frozen fingers are all that stand between you and a very, very slow, cold end. An hour passes. The condensation on the inside of the window has frozen into a thick, opaque sheet of ice. You can no longer see the men outside. You can only hear the distant, rhythmic clang of a hammer on steel. It's a desperate, lonely sound, a man hammering against the infinite indifference of the universe. Your feet are numb. It's not the pins and needles numbness of a foot that's fallen asleep. It's a deep, profound absence of feeling, as if your feet have simply ceased to be a part of you. They belong to the ice now. You try to remember the sensation of warm socks, of stepping into a hot bath. The memory is vague, academic, like reading about a foreign country you'll never visit. The initial shock in the carriage has worn off. It has been replaced by a low, simmering panic. People are talking now. First the skin turns white, then black. Then, if you're lucky, it just falls off. He speaks of a cousin who lost 3 toes and a thumb to a broken-down sleigh near Tobolsk. He describes it with the detached air of a connoisseur. The woman who was crying has started again. But it's a different sound now. Not the soft, heartbroken sobs from before. This is a thin, keening wail. The sound of pure animal terror. Simona shushes her harshly. Her fear is contagious. You can feel it spreading through the carriage. An invisible miasma, colder than the air itself. You need to use the toilet. This simple biological imperative, which has been an inconvenience for the entire journey, is now a life or death calculation. The lavatory, as it is generously called, is at the far end of the carriage. It is not heated. It is, in essence, a small uninsulated closet with a hole that opens down. To get there, you must walk. On feet you can no longer feel. Down the narrow, swaying aisle of a dead train. The thought is paralyzing, but the alternative is worse. You force yourself to move. You stumble down the aisle, clinging to the edges of the bunks for support. The faces that watch you pass are pale, spectral things in the gloom, eyes wide with their own private fears. You are all ghosts in a frozen machine. The lavatory door is frozen shut. Of course it is. You have to put your shoulder into it, hard twice, before it gives way with a screech of tortured wood. The smell that hits you is breathtaking. It's a solid, 3-dimensional odor, a monument to human waste. The air inside is so cold it feels like it's burning your lungs. A fine layer of frost covers every surface, glittering in the sliver of light from the corridor. It looks, for a moment, almost beautiful, a crystal palace of filth. You do what you must, as quickly as humanly possible. The process is a blur of fumbling with frozen buttons and shivering so violently your teeth ache. The entire experience lasts no more than 2 minutes, but it feels like an eternity. When you stumble back out into the corridor, you feel as though you've just climbed a mountain. You have faced the void and returned. You are a hero, a cold, miserable hero who smells faintly of frozen urine, but a hero nonetheless. Back in your bunk, you pull the blanket around you, but the warmth is gone. The cold has sunk into your bones. The shivering doesn't stop. It's a deep internal tremor. You begin to do a sort of grim accounting. The price of a new life, a new start in the fabled lands of the East. Vladivostok, a city by the sea. They said it was the future. They showed pristine landscapes of rolling hills and majestic forests. They did not show this. This black, frozen hell, this suffocating, stinking box. The gap between the marketing and the reality is so vast it's almost comical. It's a cosmic joke, and you are the punchline. Suddenly, a jolt of violent, shuddering lurch that throws you against the wall. A collective gasp runs through the carriage. Then, a groan, a deep, metallic protest from the very bones of the train. And then, slowly, ponderously, with the reluctance of a beast being roused from a terminal illness, motion, a slow, grinding turn of the wheels, phalanx, asterisk a pause, phalanx, asterisk the rhythm is back. Awkward. The hammer blows outside have stopped. A cheer goes up from somewhere down the train. A weak, ragged sound, but a cheer nonetheless. In your carriage, someone laughs. A hysterical, barking sound. The bureaucrat lets out a long, shuddering sigh of relief. The woman's weeping subsides into hiccuping gasps. The train picks up speed, slowly resuming its familiar cadence. The fey lack. Clack fey is no longer a sound of maddening monotony. It's the sound of life, the sound of escape. But escape from what? From the immediate threat of freezing. Yes, but you are still here. You dream you are one of the men outside, your hands frozen to a steel wrench. You dream you are the axle screaming as it shears in two. You dream you are the woman, and you are weeping for a reason. You can no longer remember. You wake up with a start, your heart hammering against your ribs. The carriage is filled with the grey pre-dawn light. The landscape outside is the same. White grey sky, probably no more than 20. He's been quiet for the whole journey. There is a dark reddish rash spreading from his neck up onto his cheeks, a constellation of tiny, angry stars. He is muttering to himself, softly, insistently, the same phrase, over and over. The bureaucrat, who is awake and watching him with a new kind of fear, leans over and whispers a single dreaded word. And this carriage, you realize with a sudden sickening clarity, is a paradise for lice. It's a 5-star, all-inclusive resort for parasites. They are in the blankets, in the straw, stuffed mattresses. There is no doctor, not a real one. A violent, uncontrollable shaking that rattles the wooden frame of his bunk. His muttering grows louder, more frantic. He is no longer in the carriage. He is somewhere else, on a battlefield, In a burning village, he cries out, a sharp, terrified yelp, and then begins to claw at his own skin, at the rash that is consuming him. No one moves. No one says a word. To show pity is to move closer. Your shared humanity, which was already stretched thin, has just snapped. He is no longer a fellow passenger. He is a contamination. He is a threat. The thin veneer of civilization has been stripped away, and underneath is the cold, hard calculus of survival. His life or yours. You press yourself against the cold metal wall of the carriage, trying to make yourself smaller, trying to will yourself invisible. You pull your filthy blanket up over your head, a child's defense against a monster. But you can't block out the sound, the shivering, the muttering, the frantic scratching. The train rattles on. Phaylak, clack, clack, clack. Asterisk, it carries you east, away from the frozen axle, away from the place you almost died. It carries you towards Vladivostok, towards the promise of a new life. But it also carries the fever. It carries the young, dying soldier and the terror he has unleashed. You lie there, under your blanket. You tell yourself, it's just your imagination. And you have a terrible sinking feeling that the worst is yet to come. Perishable. Pierce of steam. You've been in this moving metal coffin for so long that the memory of solid, unmoving ground feels like a fantasy. A story told by a madman. This is part 6 of your journey. The final leg. And if you thought it couldn't get worse, well, you haven't been paying attention. You lie on your bunk, a thin wooden shelf that has long since moulded itself to the precise contours of your misery. The wool blanket, a coarse and greasy thing, smells faintly of damp dog, coal smoke, and the quiet desperation of its previous tenants. It offers no comfort, only the illusion of it, a scratchy, symbolic barrier against the cold that owns everything out there and is slowly, patiently making its way in here. You've stopped counting the days. What's the point? Time has lost all meaning, replaced by a simple, brutal binary light and dark. The sun, a pale, indifferent smear in the grey sky, crawls above the horizon for a few miserable hours, illuminating a world of absolute, unending white, a landscape so devoid of features. It feels like an attack, an assault on the senses. Your brain, starved of stimulus, begins to invent things in the swirling snow, the ghosts of trees, the shadows of wolves, the outlines of faces you've tried to forget. Then the sun gives up, as if exhausted by the sheer effort of lighting this God-forsaken emptiness, and plunges you back into a darkness so profound. It feels like a substance, a thick, cold liquid filling the carriage. The romance is gone. Remember that? The thrill of adventure, the romance of the rails, the grand imperial project connecting a continent. Now, weeks later, the reality has set in, as unpleasantly and permanently as the soot that lines your nostrils and coats the back of your throat. The water was boiled hours ago on a communal samovar down the corridor that is the social and biological hub of this rolling pest house. The gurgle as it fills your cup is a small, familiar sound in the symphony of groans and creaks and coughs that is your world. You take a sip it. Tastes of metal, of boiled snow, of the vague, unsettling bitterness that seems to permeate everything. But it's wet, and it's not frozen. The portly merchant across the way, the one who told the same 3 stories for the first week, now just stares. His eyes are glassy, his mouth slightly agape, as if his soul checked out at the last station and his body is just waiting for the paperwork to catch up. He has a cough, a wet, rattling sound that seems to originate from the very bottom of his lungs, a sound that promises interesting developments in the field of airborne pathogens for the rest of you. Every time he hacks and splutters, you feel a fine mist settle on your face. You've learned not to flinch. It's just part of the young student who was so full of revolutionary zeal and bad poetry has fallen silent. He spends his days scribbling furiously in a little notebook, his eyes darting around with a new twitchy paranoia. He's probably composing a scathing critique of the Tsar's new railway policy. Or maybe he's just making a list of who he's going to eat first. When the train inevitably breaks down for good, you find you don't really care which. You just wish he'd stop grinding his teeth privacy. What a quaint, bourgeois concept. That's a word from another universe. You perform the most intimate bodily functions in a small, freezing closet at the end of the car, where the hole in the floor offers a fleeting, horrifying view of the tracks rushing by beneath you. The toilet is less a facility and more a philosophical question about the nature of man and his relationship with the void. It's also a masterclass in why you should never ever wear loose, fitting trousers in 1895. The smell? Oh, the smell. If you could bottle it, you could end wars. It's a complex. Layered on top of that is the sharp, acrid tang of cheap tobacco, the boiled cabbage from yesterday's meal, the ever-present coal smoke, and underneath it all, a faint, sweet, sickly smell, the smell of decay, of sickness, of things slowly, inexorably going bad. Your nose stopped registering it after the first week. A small mercy, but every now and then, a new draft from the corridor, a new shift in the carriage's foul atmosphere, brings it all flooding back, and you have to consciously remind yourself to keep breathing. The train lurches. It's not the familiar rhythm of the tracks. This is something new, something angry, the rhythmic fake clank, 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 face slows. It becomes a tortured groan, fake-la ank scree, thud, asterisk silence. The silence is worse than the noise. It's a heavy, unnatural thing. The hissing of the steam dies. The grinding of the wheels is gone. All that's left is the wind, howling outside the thin glass of the window. A lonely, predatory sound. A wave of collective dread washes through the carriage. The merchant stops staring. The student stops scribbling. The mother stops her delousing. Every head turns, every eye wide with the same unspoken question. The good news is, you've stopped moving. The bad news is, this isn't a scheduled stop. There are no lights outside, no station, no comforting signs of human existence, just the blackness and the wind and the snow, now visible as a frantic, horizontal blizzard in the weak light spilling from the carriage windows. The cold, which was always a patient predator at the edge of your awareness, now makes its move. Without the motion, without the engine's heat, the carriage's internal temperature begins to plummet. You can feel it. A physical presence, seeping through the floor, through the walls, through the very air. It's a cold that feels ancient and personal. A cold that doesn't just want to make you uncomfortable, it wants to kill you. You pull the greasy blanket tighter. It's like trying to stop a tidal wave with a paper napkin. Your breath plumes in front of your face, thick and white. The condensation on the window, which had been a liquid film a moment ago, is now freezing into intricate crystalline ferns of ice. It's beautiful. Not in a blaze of glory, not in a heroic last stand, but frozen solid in a third-class railway car, smelling of cabbage and despair. Your obituary will be a minor inconvenience, a footnote in a shipping manifest. One passenger unaccounted for. The door at the end of the car bursts open. A figure stands there, silhouetted against the dim light of the corridor. It's one of the train's crew. He's wrapped in so many layers of fur and wool. He looks less like a man and more like a bear that's just robbed a laundry. Snow is caked to his beard and eyebrows. We'll be here for a while. A while? Could be hours. He slams the door, plunging the carriage back into its bubble of quiet terror. And the supplies are dwindling. The first few hours are a blur of shivering and shared misery. The samovar runs out of hot water. The food, you try to gnaw on a piece of bread that now has the consistency of a granite brick. You risk breaking a tooth. The ultimate indignity, the social order, already frayed, dissolves completely. It's every man, woman, and coughing child for themselves. The merchant, who you now realize has a private stash of vodka, refuses to share. He sits clutching his bottle like a holy relic, taking small, furtive sips. You fantasize about strangling him with his own scarf. The student begins to mutter to himself, arguing with an unseen comrade about the finer points of dialectical materialism. It is not the most reassuring sound. You huddle with your fellow doomed souls. Strangers press against you, their cold bodies seeking your equally cold body for a warmth that doesn't exist. It's a perverse intimacy. You can smell the fear on them, a sharp, metallic scent like old pennies. You can feel the tremors of their shivering. You are no longer individuals, truly warm, not just less cold, but genuinely. The memories are faint, distant, like scenes from someone else's life. And then, just as a strange, peaceful numbness begins to set in, the first siren song of hypothermia, a sound, a clang, a single, metallic, impossibly loud fei-lang fei from outside, followed by another, and another. It's Boris. An hour later. You are moving. The wave of relief is so profound it leaves you dizzy. The merchant actually lets out a small sob and offers a swig of his precious vodka to the woman next to him. She takes it without a word. A new social contract is forged in the crucible of shared trauma. The journey resumes, but something has broken. The thin veneer of civilization is gone. It's not the silence of boredom. It's the silence of shell. Shocked survivors. You see the skeletons of birch trees, stark and black against the snow, like accusing fingers. The endless white is no longer a canvas. It's a shroud. Days later, something shifts. The white is broken by patches of brown, muddy earth. The trees are taller, thicker. There are signs of life. A small, smoky village of log huts flashes past the window. A man in a fur hat stops and stares at the train, his face a mask of stoic indifference. The Pacific. The thought of arrival brings no joy. The promotional materials for this grand Siberian adventure probably promised something like that. But you know better now. The world isn't a promotional pamphlet. It's a frozen axle and a man named Boris with a hammer. Your destination, when you find it's a muddy, windswept port town clinging precariously to the edge of the world. The buildings are rough, unpainted wood. The streets are rivers of freezing mud. The air smells of fish, salt, and the same old despair you've been breathing for weeks, just with a slightly different accent. You step off the train onto the platform. It doesn't sway. It doesn't groan. It's just there, solid, unforgiving. You stand there for a moment, a pathetic, soot-stained creature in a world of mud and grey sky. You have stared into the frozen heart of the world's largest empire. And for what? So you can stand here. The good news is, your ordeal is over. And for a fleeting, insane moment, you feel a pang of something like nostalgia for the rhythmic clatter, for the greasy blanket, for the shared, simple misery of the journey. Because as awful as it was, at least you were going somewhere. Now you have arrived. So next time you're sitting on your sofa, complaining that your food delivery is 5 minutes late, or that the Wi-Fi is a little sluggish, just take a moment. Picture yourself here, 0.1895, the smell of cold mud in your nostrils, a cough rattling in your chest, and the dawning soul, crushing realization that you've just spent 2 months of your life suffering through hell to arrive in hell's colder, damper annex. Feel grateful yet? You're welcome.